An unusual virtual reality fantasy game, named Chrono Life, is being introduced that boasts to provide its users with unique experiences of freedom, romance, travel, and a whole different kind of reality. The protagonist is rejected based on his amateurishness, and while rusty old sword he is holding is considered trash by a hunting party. So, a wacko-manish kid holding a pink swirly and enjoying the evergreen comfort of digging his boogerish sniffer, advises him to upgrade all his equipment to level 11. That adventurer stands amidst a lot of nonchalant characters, and slowly his mouth begins to quiver. He frustratingly curses himself and then also badmouths the game. He draws his garishly gleaming sword, posing to attack the ones who insulted him. Instead, he begins to whimper uncontrollably with rivers flowing out of his eyes while continuously profaning the game. The amused hunting party members wonder whether he is creating a hysterical scene just because they rejected him. However, the protagonist, oblivious to his surroundings, keeps on calling the ripe green grapes sour, and flaunting his sword that he bought by spending an exorbitant amount of money. Fortunately for him, a beautiful girl appears in front of him and offers him to join her hunting party. Now as that honeysuckle tune raves into his ears, his mood and his tone immediately take a U-turn, and instantly the ripe grapes become divinely delicious. Later, as they trot along the path in a deep treeland, the young lady lauds the protagonist for some reason. He explains that he received some pocket change the previous day and spent quite an amount, around 55,000 won worth of beginner packages to be exact. It is revealed that the sword, which was earlier considered trashy, is actually a knight's double-edged sword bought from a package. The pretty lass is visibly impressed into him. The handsome lad appears to be one of the heroes of fairy tales. Quite predictably, the guy pretends to be more flustered than flattered. Soon the proximity between two beautiful souls increases. Within the blink of an eye, they get married, and next pops out a cute little child out of nowhere. The rosy-cheeked clown is about to name his newborn, but wait, the story abruptly turns back to the point when the loafer is journeying through the forest, and spaced out somewhere after the flattery got the good of him. He is brought back to his senses when the girl announces that they have finally reached the forest. A flabbergasted protagonist looks here and there in sheer confusion as he doesn't realize they were supposed to dwell deep into the forest when out of the blue, the damsel turns into a demoness and plunges her crafted staff into his abdomen. The protagonist's eyes pop out in agony and disbelief as he spits the red liquid. In no time his HP begins to slip like quicksand and he drops flat on the ground. Not only that, he is terrified to see the fairy turning into a witch having a horrifying aura. He guesses that she framed him to get her hands on his precious sword. However, the girl giggles in disdain as to who would actually need a trashy weapon like his. The lad's pride is hurt more than his body. The damsel makes a shocking revelation that she lured him all the way to this deserted forest to kill him. The hapless protagonist pants in agony as he realizes that hunting party crap was a fabricated lie. The girl affirms while beaming wickedly as to why would she form a party with a dimwit like him. The poor guy sets back pitiably when the heartless calls him a loser in real life, as he wasn't even able to talk to her when the whole situation would have been in real life. For the first time she advises him to get advanced equipment because even if he is a good-for-nothing fellow, his equipment should be good. She keeps on insulting him for getting a low-standard warrior set and insensitively claims that his parents must be beggars. She doesn't realize that a volcano is being boiled inside the protagonist. He rises fiercely with bloodshot eyes, but before he can attack her, she instantly chops him away like some livestock. Suddenly the system gives a red alert that all conditions have been met and now the transition of the girl to a hidden class has begun. The change starts from the tips of her hair, which begins to darken to a deep raven all the way up to the roots. Next, her sassy princess outfit changes into a more divine, cloud-colored robes along with a pair of large feathery wings emerging from her back. The system notifies her that her change of job is complete and now belongs to the hidden class of Goddess of Life. The Witch of Life smirks and announces that she has finished a count for slaying 1,000 lives. Well, the chopped goat was her millennial target. She stretches in great relief and then ostentatiously steps on a piece of corpse a la king, as now for her only the final quest is left. Surprisingly, the maimed protagonist is still able to think that on that day he learns something about the truth of Chrono Life, that it follows the law of jungle. Now for this instance of the game, his character has died, but now he will be respawned in a safe zone as he has lost a considerable amount of experience. Soon in a dark and deserted alley, lined with wooden barrels and empty crates, the protagonist's character is respawned. However, the insults that have been thrown at him in his previous life have been engraved like hideous graffiti on a clean wall. He begins to tremble in fury as if the inside molten lava is about to explode and burn the whole cruel world, when suddenly the baby bursts into huge tears and wails horrendously for attention. He sniffles for some time, brings out his reinforcement hammer, and increases its enhancement value by 1. Next, he slams his pricey but otherwise trashy sword on the ground and then bangs it to enhance it by using that reinforcing hammer. Alas! The act fails and the sword miserably reaches its end. Next, he places his iron gloves on the ground and hits them with the hammer. Sadly, this attempt also fails and the leather gloves are miserably nailed. Now when the equipment breaks once it is reinforced, the owner loses everything. It can be seen that the protagonist is reduced to his birthsuit. Thankfully his rear is covered though. He helplessly breaks into tears thinking about the uselessness of the game. Out of the blue, a random wooden stick is dropped in front of him, which is a basic weapon for beginners and is supposed to be very weak. To add fuel to the fire, a comical emoticon of a playful kid shows up annoyingly waving him. The protagonist fires up to be given a useless tree branch with a single leaf laughing at his sorry condition by none other than an idiotic G. After a pause, he blankly picks up his hammer and aimlessly bangs it on the wooden stick. This time the protagonist gets lucky, the reinforcement is a success and the stick reaches level 1. He again hits the stick with the hammer, he gets lucky the second time, and the stick is raised to level 2. The protagonist is amused and wonders why the hammer only works on trashy items. Soon he keeps on striking the stick with the hammer and every time the upgrade is successful. However, every time the stick is upgraded, it also receives additional damage which increases exponentially. For instance, currently, the level of the stick has been upgraded to 6 but the additional damage it receives is 64, as 2 raised to power 6 is 64. He knows that the stick will break sooner or later as the higher the enhancement level, the higher the chance of failure. The protagonist keeps on banging the head, not his but the hammer's, till the first light of dawn brightens the surroundings. The deadbeat lad is exhausted and drenched in sweat, as he strikes the hammer on the wooden stick one last time. To his bewilderment, the stick fires up and an eerie flash of lighting emits from it like a hot molten lava. The system notifies him that the last reinforcement has been successful as well and he has achieved the maximum enhancement of an item, that is, the stick has been upgraded to level 99. Now the protagonist is thoroughly baffled because he has never seen an enhancement of the highest level before. Also, the additional level at this point is 2 raised to power 99, which is around 6 followed by 29 zeros. Now the whole thing doesn't make any sense to him because after enhancing it 10 times, the probability of another success is less than 5%. Still, the monkey begins to flaunt his stick by flipping it upward and twirling it around. Then ultimately he bangs the stick with his complete power onto ground. To his astonishment, the buildings around him begin to turn into rubble with a blinding flash of light. The blinding flash of light reaches the sky and then begins to run downwards as one humongous lightfall from the Earth's surface spreads infinitely in outer space. The protagonist shrieks in terror as even he doesn't realize and believe the tremendous power that has been transferred to a mere wooden stick. Soon in a chaotic turn, people begin to run here and there in a sheer frenzy, wondering whether a dragon spewed some flames or it was a game event. Someone even makes a bizarre speculation that the continent has split into two. It can be seen that in front of the protagonist there is a sea of fire charring everything coming in its way. From this day, a Guinness record has been created within the history of VR games for giving the most number of players a game over notification in a single moment. At the same time, the protagonist's notoriety increases every time a player is killed, so in total 850,617 players are slain. The protagonist is all lit up remembering his opponents who have scorned him in the past. In his real life, he learned to pay for his studies with his own income. In this game, he learned the truth about it that follows the jungle rules, and now it's time for his enemies to learn something from him. Now the protagonist's real life is revealed, that in reality, he is a nobody, as he is of average height and has an ordinary appearance. He excels neither in academics nor in sports. To express his life in the game tier, he is around a bronze 4. Back to the gaming world, the protagonist comes out of the hidden alley in an open town where there is a usual hustle and bustle. Strangely, nobody notices an almost bare man draped in a hood carrying a tree branch. But how can he remain unnoticed for long, as he collides with a rugged crook twice his height and size, and a head free from any vegetation? The angry rogue grabs the protagonist by his hood and, thinking that he is a noob, begins to threaten him. A woman by his side amusingly coaxes him to leave the poor newbie alone, as the latter seems quite terrified. The protagonist is quite aware that in this world he cannot get away from being bullied, so he curses Kojak and then hits his shiny moon head with his stick. The wrathful rascal digests the fact that he is being struck by a mere stick, but before that, he is struck again. In no time the bald rogue is sent flying upward somewhere unknown along a flash of blinding light. The woman by his side shrieks in terror, as the protagonist walks past her, declaring that he is the strongest and the hero of the game. The ominous red glow is replaced by a refreshing blue spark in his eyes until the system warns him that the stick's durability is falling rapidly and only 3 hits out of 5 are remaining. The protagonist is alarmed by this sudden anguish. Back in the dark alley, he sits before his prized stick and frets uncontrollably, not knowing what to do next. Now the wooden stick is already a weak weapon with a very low durability, as it breaks after a few hits. The protagonist curses loudly and drops back like a rigid wooden puppet. He lies flatly on the ground staring miserably at the sky, thinking that his whole life is screwed. But then he grits his teeth angrily and resolves to screw those who ignored him, and especially the witch who killed him for her own selfish motives. Next, he is found in the Valley of Death, which is lined with innumerable human skulls like smooth stones paved on the normal ground. He walks on them as if strolling in a rose garden, crushing the skulls beneath his bare feet and muttering uncontrollably. Suddenly the whole surrounding area is filled with an ominous aura, and instantly a violet-tinged terrifying demon appears in front of him, trying to scare him off with its magnanimous set of teeth and horribly huge paws with razor-sharp talons. Surprisingly, the protagonist remains cool and calm in front of Chrono Life's strongest boss monster, Horus, the twin-headed dragon. The monster roars at him thunderously that he has crossed the boundary of death. Horus explains that this is a juncture where life and death collide. Horus calls the protagonist a mortal fool and warns him that he will suffer in despair, but before he can finish, one of his heads is struck by lightning as the protagonist swings his stick for the 4th time. Horus's head burns with a blaring flash of fire and is distorted completely. Now he is left with only 2 hits, so he resolves to use all hits and join the strongest mob in the game. But before he can make Horus, an ugly headless monster, the latter fretfully begs him to stop. In fact, he even pays respect to the protagonist as he calls him Hyungnim, or Sir. Now the protagonist wonders about the U-turn in Orus's behavior, as earlier he called him an immortal fool. The monster turns into a cute purple plushie and reasons that he couldn't help it as those words were programmed into him. After much coaxing, the obstinate lad agrees to listen to Orus. So when Orus wonders about his identity, the protagonist is greatly agitated and is all set to kill him. With that, he strikes the monster one more time, and this time the monster's hideous human form is also revealed. Now he is left with only one hit, and the protagonist begins to wail his woes about the stick's durability issue. Immediately Orus's non-existent ears prick up as he catches the wave durability issue. Orus offers to help him in this regard. He is notified by the system that Orus wants the protagonist to dive into his soul. In fact, Orus wants to gift his soul to him. He is then asked to accept or reject the quest. Now the protagonist is puzzled about this uncanny offer, and then Orus mentions the ego sword. Now the protagonist has never heard of that weapon, so in simpler terms Orus explains that he will fill the wooden stick with his soul and not his body. Soon his weapon will contain an ego and evolve into an ego sword having infinite durability. The protagonist's eyes widen in sheer delight, and seeing him mellow down a bit, the plushy Orus adds eagerly that the sword is the strongest weapon in Chrono Life. The protagonist begins to laugh maniacally, while a perturbed Orus stares at him anxiously, wondering whether the hysterical sir liked his offer. The protagonist reveals that at this point the whole storyline will change, as earlier he nearly gave up on taking revenge, but it seems as if the heavens also want him to take revenge. Even the mighty Orus shudders at his hysteria and wants to hide in his mother's lap. The protagonist resolves to form a contract with Orus and accepts the offer. Instantly, he is surrounded by a mauve-colored eccentric magical pattern, and gradually Orus's soul gets infused with the wooden stick while his body diminishes in thin air. Now the wooden stick has the level of 99, but with an exceptional grade of ego, having the durability of an infinity. In no time he is surrounded by hundreds of demons, chanting that the great revenge is still to be taken. Soon an invincible Orus's army is all set to take their master's revenge from his enemies. Meanwhile, on the guild's bulletin board, a hooded man is wanted and an SSS-grade national bounty has been issued to him. A knight bellows to call for the attention of all the adventurers and informs them about the wanted criminal, as he has murdered more than 800,000 people in a day. According to him, this is the worst PK spree ever known. The knight continues that these posters are distributed in 12 kingdoms, on 3 continents around the world. Not only is there a whopping reward for capturing the notorious man that is 1 billion gold. Now the adventurers are quite startled about the exorbitant amount offered as a bounty. Soon there is a parade of knights, and from the pattern in their armor they appear to be royal guards, and the adventurers hit the side to pay their respects. The person who is leading them is the guild master of the Holy Guild, Saintry. The royal guards are followed by the top 10 elite and strongest knights adorning the crimson cape with a white cross, known as the Crossline. They are headed by the guildmaster of Crossline named Suho. Next in line is the strongest magician in the royal family, as well as the guildmaster of the Holy Land Guild called Abracadabra. After that, the guildmaster of thieves, Hong, is amusingly glorified as the guildmaster of the chivalrous robbery guild, known as Robin Hood. Last but not least is the king of the Arden Castle, the guildmaster of the Justice Guild named Hawkeye. Honestly, it seems like a parade going on in a fun carnival of a festival, but in reality, the world's top 5 guilds are gathered in one place, and this is the first ever alliance of the world's top 5 guilds. Then, as the leader of the World Union Guild, Hawkeye declares war against the heinous player killer whose photo was printed on the poster. On a closer look, the notorious wanted man is none other than the protagonist. Meanwhile, the wanted man can be conveniently found in the dark valley laughing psychotically while marveling at his newly found treasure, the wooden stick. He nearly jumps out of his skin when the purple monster, now in the form of Casper the friendly ghost, pops out of the stick and wonders about his jolly mood. The protagonist nearly has a heart attack to learn that the wood has a head. The ghost introduces himself as Urus, the twin-headed dragon. Suddenly the image of a horrifying monster flashes in his mind, and then he looks at the purple pet peeves with a tedious expression. Urus reminds him that now his soul has become unified with the wooden stick. This is something he explained in simpler terms earlier. Now only the protagonist can see or hear Urus. The protagonist even has the nerve to touch Urus's cheek and comment that he has become a plushie. However, he finds something missing, and that is Urus's twin head. To add salt to the injury, the protagonist wonders where the other bust went. Urus looks at him pitiably, as if yelling at him secretly that it was the master who smashed and burned his beloved for. Suddenly one of the wanted flyers comes soaring toward him, leaving him completely alarmed. Later, the protagonist roams freely on the busy streets munching on a chicken leg. Since on the poster he is half camouflaged by a hood, that's why no one seems to recognize him. Meanwhile, Urus shrieks in amazement, which is expected from his wondrous master who took 800,000 pins with just one bowl. Urus cannot even come that close. Not only that the bounty on his master's head is 1 billion gold, and that according to him is really high class, as 1 billion gold means 1 billion in real money. Now the protagonist wonders whether AI characters like Urus can even use words like real money, as it is considered a violation for an AI to use words unrelated to this world. But Urus doesn't care, since he is already dead and floats like a cute little purple carnival balloon in the air. Still, he is curious about his master's next course of action, as with a bounty that big, users from all over the world would be after his life. It is then the purple poltergeist becomes ridiculously red-hot and suggests eradicating the whole human race. While merrily munching down the roasted succulent flesh, the protagonist recalls the past events about how he used his magical wooden stick to create quite a stir, and now because of that, he has become a celebrity. Now the protagonist is actually enjoying the spotlight to Urus's bafflement. He decided to go with the LHS concept since things ended up like that. Okay, this is not the algebraic LHS equals RHS concept of a simultaneous equation, but here the protagonist means loser hiding his strength. This is when an extremely strong person pretends to be a loser to hide his strength. Now Urus doesn't think that's a good idea because his master will be completely ignored and will be considered a weakling. However, for the protagonist, the whole idea is fun. He keeps on bragging that Urus doesn't know anything like that. In the eyes of others he would look like a weakling, but in reality, he is the hero. The protagonist is in a state of euphoria as he is quite enjoying his fantasy when suddenly an arrow plunges him in the back. Urus is completely panic-stricken when he sees his master spitting blood and then falling flat on his stomach. The arrow has been shot by one of the men from the Justice Guild, headed by 5 Union Guild Supreme Commander Hawkeye. On his command, the knights march to the spot where the protagonist is lying on the ground. Soon Hawkeye commands his men to tie that heinous man who slaughtered 800,000 people and then throw him in jail. The men hail at their commander's order while an injured protagonist lies motionless in front of them. Urus urges him to stand on his feet as fast as he can, as the humans might be weaker but they can be dangerous if they all charge at him together. To the knights' surprise, their enemy stands up on his feet before they can tie him up. A furious Hawkeye bellows deafeningly that the felon should not be given a chance to breathe. Next, he orders everyone to attack together. Surprisingly, the protagonist doesn't budge and stays put at his place gallantly to Urus's anguish. Next, he pulls the arrow out from his body and takes back his words about this whole LHS concept. Now he wanted to live peacefully by being in LHS earlier. He stares at the sea of soldiers in disdain and yes, hysterically, that they have brought doom upon themselves. Soon he strikes the stick on the floor and instantly there is a wildfire everywhere, killing hundreds of World Guild soldiers including Hawkeye, who still is unable to comprehend what happened in the blink of an eye. A panic-stricken Hawkeye checks out the irreversible destruction caused in the area and realizes that the capital city of the First Kingdom suddenly disappeared. While he is still analyzing, the protagonist approaches him, but before that, a wrathful Hawkeye brings out a summoning crystal that can summon as many users as one wants, but it can only be used once. He smashes the crystal single-handedly. In a second the whole area is covered by several blue magical patterns. Hawkeye brings the other members of the Union to attention and commands a mass teleport or large-scale teleportation. In no time soldiers from each of the guilds appear on the magical patterns to the protagonist's stupor. In no time the one-man army is surrounded by approximately 3 million knights belonging to the World Union of Guild. Hawkeye points at the protagonist and austerely commands everyone to attack the criminal. The protagonist looks at them with sympathy and then in the blink of an eye, a raging fire erupts from the middle that can be compared to hellfire, knocking down millions of knights, including the guild masters. Even Horus, who is floating nearby frantically, is astounded by the gruesome sight. He swings his stick again and knocks out another slice of the army of knights. Horus decides to eat his own words, as earlier he had claimed that although humans are a weaker race, they can be trouble if faced in large numbers. Horus remembers warning his master that it is common sense, no matter how strong the boss monster is, he can't take on thousands of people all at once. As the World Union Guild is not an easy opponent, they are a group of rankers from all over the world. Now earlier Horus had feared that they would still lose even if he tried to mobilize his own army, so he suggested the protagonist leave the place as soon as possible, but currently, Horus frets and sweats thinking that he has greatly misunderstood his master. Next, the crossline headed by their leader Siho attacks the protagonist, but the latter flashes a toothpaste advertisement-worthy smile and strikes his stick. As usual, the soldiers are burnt in hellfire. Next, the royal magician, Abracadabra, begins to chant mantras consisting of the Arabic alphabet. Next she manages to bring a big magical pattern over the protagonist's head. She then chants to magic enhancement to disintegrate ancient magic destruction. The protagonist blankly stares at the sudden gush of magical power being ousted out of the magical pattern, but instead of getting petrified he notices dreamily that the name of the magic spell is heavenly, and he feels that he must also think of a name as well. But with the help of one strike of the stick, the magical power is completely absorbed by the sudden rushing of fire towards the magical, and in no time the magical pattern disappears. Abracadabra is thoroughly shocked as a mere homeless-looking man breaks through his ancient magic. She frantically calls out to her royal magicians to be prepared for her next command. But before that, the giant matchstick has already been struck against the ground, causing a huge flame to knock down all the royal magicians including Abracadabra. According to the protagonist, 1 against 3 millions wasn't an overwhelming outcome, but it was disastrous. Shockingly, the whole World Union is defeated. A thunderstruck Hawkeye perches amidst the disaster, vibrating uncontrollably like a blaring cell phone as he cannot believe the fact that one person defeated a whole lot of soldiers. The protagonist approaches his head and mentions that he never kills anyone on purpose. The protagonist puts the whole blame on Hawkeye for making the protagonist lose control of his strength. Now Hawkeye is more perturbed as to why the protagonist won't kill him. However, the protagonist shows him the obvious picture that earlier he shot him with an arrow, and with that, he strikes Hawkeye's head with the stick to a gooey pulp. As expected, that uncanny battle that day became a hot topic among the people, including not only the users of Chrono Life, but users of other games as well, and people who have no interest in games. Out of the blue, Oris pops out of the stick and lauds his efforts. But then he hears some footsteps from his behind and he wonders tediously that there is one more left to tackle. He figures out the carved staff and long black hair, and as the figure comes closer to him, he is struck by a 1,000,000 thunderbolt when he sees the same damsel Turnwitch who once ruthlessly took his life and walked away. The lady addresses him as Mr. Sloppy and mentions that they are meeting after a long time. A vast array of the plains at sunset is laced with 3,000,000 corpses along with countless swords and spears strewn on the ground. And here there is the person whom he long wished to take revenge from. The lady also addresses him with Mr. Hio so lovingly that the protagonist is glued to the ground numb with astoundment. The whole arrangement is quite dramatic, as the protagonist remembers all the insults and scorns that were mercilessly thrown like daggers at him by the divine witch. His grasp on the stick tightens involuntarily, as he is still not sure of this because it's contrary to what he feels right now. But then he cannot help but laugh hysterically. The witch smiles as if she had a wonderful past with him and mentions that she didn't expect to meet him at this place, and it is sheer fate. The protagonist smirks at her when she mentions fate, as he could actually sense when something dreadful was staring at him. Now even though he approaches her to smash her head, but still he wants to have a chit-chat with her, starting from what really happened to her hair and whether she dyed it. The lady is obviously flattered and informs him that she changed jobs once she killed him, to the hidden job goddess of life, and because of that her hair color changed. The guy stares brazenly at her as one looks at a pot roast at a feast. He glares at her for mercilessly slaying 1,000 people, and her name should be Goddess of Death instead. However, the witch finds the whole situation quite amusing. He immediately strikes the stick against the ground to start a massive fire, as he has already heard her funny story, and now it's thrashing time. However, the girl is all hale and hearty and expresses her desire to have some more chit-chat with him. Soon he strikes the stick again, causing massive havoc, and surely this time he has hit the goddess right on the spot. Oris has been a spectator all the time and roots for his master excitedly. A delighted protagonist gives a satisfied look at the empty spot where the lady was standing before, but then his joy turns into anguish when a faint lining of a woman's figure begins to appear amidst all the dust and heat. He cannot believe his eyes that amidst all the destruction, the witch remains untouched. She smiles at him, sweetly lauding his efforts and remarking that his strength has improved greatly, however he cannot slay her with that weak attack. The purple pet peeves begin to shriek hysterically in terror, not realizing that he has actually put his foot in his master's mouth in all that frenzy. Agitatingly, the protagonist tries to speak with something cottony stuck in his mouth and words come out of it quite hilariously. Now something strange happens. The purple poltergeist can only be seen by his master, but his heart skips a beat when the witch's eyes meet his. The protagonist finally flings away the purple plushie off him as he finds the whole situation quite mysterious. Now he knows that his attack has been quite successful, because everything has been wiped off at a great distance, even the goddess is majestically standing in a deep depression courtesy of his powers. But the question is how the goddess is scratchless. This is because a mere human cannot kill a god. A distorted smile spreads across his face as he hits his head with the stick while his heart is burning with unquenchable flames. Still, the ferocious bull rushes madly toward the witch carrying his stick, but the bowling pin stands still without fidgeting and smiling unbreakably. He smolders the already demolished area with a never-ending fire, whose sparks can be seen overflowing from the earth. Oris trembles violently as he feels that the whole continent is shaking with tremors coming from beneath. He is afraid that the continent will be completely destroyed without a trace. But predictably nothing happens to the she-devil. She calls out to him to stop making useless endeavors. The protagonist stares at her in contempt as she mocks him that Mr. Hio might be thinking of her daily and devising ways to kill her. He heads back away from her at a safer distance. He then tries to move his arm, which eerily gets dislocated to the woman's amusement, but the guy is trying to see how hard he can swing his arm. But then he reveals his plan that actually takes that cool and calm expression off the goddess's face. He wonders what would happen if he destroys the whole planet. Then the goddess will either be blown away by the explosion or sent to outer space from the recoil. The witch appears as if cold water has been splashed on her face, but still, she doesn't forget to insult him, as according to her only a mere human can think so insensibly. But the Pisco is adamant to hit it with all his might. Because even though he killed one massive army that day, he didn't use his full strength. The witch reminds him that if he destroys the whole planet, then even he will die alongside her, so that will be termed as suicide bombing rather than a revenge PK. But the protagonist is not all convinced, as a torturous memory of the witch chopping him down mercilessly flashes in front of him. He remembers that he paid with his life to learn that the truth of the game is the survival of the fittest. Also, it is time for the she-wolf to learn that lesson. Soon he raises his stick ominously and uses his whole might to bang it on the ground. He advises her with a wacky expression on his face that she must not mess up with those weirdos who have nothing to lose in their lives. For the first time, the goddess breaks into a cold sweat and she tries to stop him, but it's too late. The fruitcake has already signed for a wipeout planet operation and hits the ground with all his vigor. In no time, the whole globe is divided into 6 equal halves longitudinally, with treacherous lines of fires destroying everything coming in their way. Next, it becomes a hot ball of flames emitting intolerant radiations. Then everything goes inky for a moment, followed by an array of binary numbers displayed in neon. Meanwhile, in a virtual reality capsule room where several gamers come to enjoy Chrono Life, the players are suddenly bounced off the game. There are cries of sheer frustration and anger everywhere as they charge towards the manager who has been dozing off earlier. They wonder in anger whether he has turned off the breaker on purpose and that this is not a way to run the capsule room. The distressed manager tries to calm down the angry mob of youngsters and explains that it is not the breaker or the power failure. He points out that maybe the server of the game is facing an issue. Suddenly a player informs others that an announcement has been uploaded on the game's homepage that they are currently commencing an emergency server maintenance. The players are all disappointed to learn that the server is actually down. Meanwhile, despite all odds, there is one player who is still using the game and is connected to it. Meanwhile, the array of neon digits keeps on flowing wildly. Soon the system flashes notifications for synchronizing with the main system, client verification, and then it checks for the connected users. It appears that the current number of connected users is only 1, any guesses? Next, the protagonist appears to be standing on a matrix having various combinations of 16-digit binary configurations. He is quite perplexed about his surroundings as he has never been in such a situation before. Out of the blue, a strange voice informs him that he just destroyed the planet named ST-389, a planet known for its beauty in the 4th universe. The stranger mentions that it was their mom's favorite place. The protagonist wonders about the stranger's identity and, after a brief pause, the stranger ominously informs him that he is a mysterious being. However, our protagonist is not the person to get intimidated so easily, so he coolly brushes off the identity crises the self-acclaimed mysterious being is having, so he wonders whether that stranger has seen a raven-haired woman. The stranger mentions that right now it's only the two of them in this place. Now as the stranger's face gets a close-up, it appears that spookily his face doesn't have any eyes. The protagonist anxiously looks around here and there, so the stranger is amazed at his perplexity since he is the one who wiped everyone from the planet. The explosion was so huge that no one could have possibly survived that. All living things were instantly washed off. The protagonist smirks and then finally screams in delight to the stranger's bewilderment that his revenge was at last successful. The maniacal monkey begins to dance with joy as this is the reason he plays games. He calls out to Oris, his pet peeves, to pop out to celebrate with him, but uncannily not even a spiff of gas is sprayed from the stick. An agitated protagonist slaps the stick to awaken the possibly passed out Oris, but nothing happens. The eyeless stranger reminds him again that there is no one apart from themselves, so even that kid Oris is also not there. But then the protagonist wonders about who the stranger is actually, since the system is showing that there is only one player, which is the protagonist. He guesses that maybe the stranger is an NPC or an administrator. Suddenly the stranger begins to generate bizarre crackling sounds just like in yesteryear's radio's annoying static noises. Then he pauses and smiles cryptically, signaling that something is already intruding. There is a blinding flash of light, and the stranger bids farewell to the protagonist, but before that, he requests him to pay his regards to someone named Furry. The lad is greatly flabbergasted as he hysterically tries to stop the stranger, but in the end, he is all alone in that desolate matrix. Finally, even the protagonist is logged out of the game. The gaming arena is deserted with dimmed lights. The protagonist takes off his headgear and is thoroughly dismayed. He just couldn't understand the reason for the emergence of that eyeless strange, and then what Furry he was talking about. He is in for another shock when he finds 3 thugs waiting for him outside his capsule. One of them seems like the boss, who is blonde, dressed in white, with branded goggles, and smoking a cigar. While the other 2, men in black, seem like his bodyguards. The man approaches the protagonist and addresses him as Lee Jiwoo, who is 21 years old. It is revealed that Jiwoo has been playing Chrono Life for the past 3 months. The boss also knows about his weapon of choice, a powerful wooden stick of level 99. Suddenly it dawns on a terror-struck Jiwoo that the boss is actually Furry. The boss then removes his goggles, reveals his sinister and cruel eyes, and finally his wicked intentions of stealing Jiwoo's magic stick. Next, the story moves into a flashback where the protagonist is introduced in real life for the first time as Lee Jiwoo, who is 21 years old. He is an ordinary college student who enjoys playing Chrono Life. Until now he was just a novice player, but by the stroke of luck, he made the plus 99 wooden stick and then thrashed up those whom he didn't favor. Soon the events follow their course chronologically, just like they were discussed previously. Currently, he is taken away by some unknown thugs to a restaurant where he has dinner with the boss. When the boss finds the food untouched by Jiwoo, he reprimands him for not eating, as the lady who cooks food in the restaurant has exceptional culinary skills. Immediately Jiwoo rushes for a spoonful obediently, but wonders about the bizarre situation he has landed into. The boss has memories associated with this gukpab restaurant from the time he was broke. It has been 15 years since his company was established during the early development stages of Chrono Life. Now Jiwoo is quite stunned when he hears the description from the man, as he cannot believe he is sitting in front of the president of Chrono Life, Choi Deokbi. Relief flows like hot hair from Jiwoo's body when he learns that the boss is actually a CEO boss and not the gangster boss. Also, he learns that the men in suits are bodyguards but company employees. One of them is a character modeler, another is the planning director for sound, and the last one is the marketing team leader. Still not convinced, Jiwoo wonders why the president of a large gaming company is here to see him. The boss reminds him that he is here to retrieve the plus 99 wooden stick. Jiwoo is panic-struck, but the boss assures him that he doesn't need to be surprised, as in a game company it is quite a natural thing to do, to retrieve bug items. Now this ignites wrath within Jiwoo as Choi calls his precious and matchless wooden stick a bug item because it is a baby that he carved and enhanced all by himself. Choi chops his words in the middle and points out that the official probability of success after reinforcing an item 10 times is only 3%. And beyond that, the probability further decreases. Choi glares at him ominously that if the wooden stick is not a bug, then can Jiwoo guess the percentage of the probability he broke through? A fiery Jiwoo cools down a bit, though very much disappointed. The boss assures him that he will take care of his wooden stick quite well. Meanwhile, near the vicinity of the front town, a humongous monster of level 21 named Gaurus is being battled by some adventurers. As the bull-like monster charges towards them, one of the girls uses her staff to ignite fire magic. Another one throws a missile to ward off the beast. In no time, the beast is overpowered by both the flames and missiles. One of the adventurers instructs the girls to try the tactic one more time. One of the girls named Kyantuka charges toward the beast all by herself. The leader stops him from taking the risk, but Q doesn't listen and climbs up the gigantic head of the monster. The monster gives his head such a tight shake that the girl is thrown in the air. The hapless Q then falls to the ground with a sickening thud, to her comrades' horror. Her comrades try to wake her up, but it seems as if Q, who is a priestess, has passed out. Meanwhile, a dejected Jiwoo is sitting in on a stone nearby, watching the whole scene as if watching some TV serial. He wonders about his next step. The purple plushie is back hogging down a chicken leg and wonders what his master will be doing next. Unconsciously, Jiwoo reaches out for his prized wooden stick. The story moves back to the time when Jiwoo is having a conversation with Choi in Gukpab restaurant. Choi mentioned that he wanted to confiscate Jiwoo's wooden stick, but then he abruptly took a U-turn that this is what the company wanted Choi to demand from Jiwoo. However, Choi doesn't think that it is a fair practice. Jiwoo's miserable face suddenly lights up with hope when Choi continues that he personally looked into the matter and he found out that Jiwoo's stick is not a bug item. So he reached a conclusion that he won't interfere anymore with Jiwoo, whether he kills the strongest mob boss like Horus, kills 3 million people, or destroys a planet. Jiwoo is free to do anything as a user. It is then he passes a bowl containing cubed radish kimchi and states whether Jiwoo wants to add this to his gukpab or not. It is entirely his choice. Jiwoo grabs the bowl when suddenly an old hag intervenes and slaps Choi from behind and in sheer anger warns him not to put any radish kimchi in the gukpab. The old woman keeps on yelling that Choi is driving her mad and what's the point of making beef bone soup all night long. She also adds that she put in radish kimchi on the menu while considering Choi. With that, she stomps away furiously. Choi's shoulders droop in dismay and he looks down upon the table completely humiliated. Even Jiwoo drops the bowl of kimchi soup on the table. Currently, while staring at the stick, he feels that the magic stick is just like the radish kimchi soup and gukbap of Chrono Life. Meanwhile, the live soap resumes after a short commercial break, when the leader of a hunting party curses Kyantuka for playing crap. He reprimands her for not maintaining her position, which is a basic rule of a hunting party. The adventurer keeps on cursing her, calling her mean names. However, the leader is angry at Kyantuka because due to her they have to hold off the hunt. Jiwoo spaces out in the flashback where in the same gukbap restaurant, Choi hesitantly asks him for a favor. He explains that Chrono Life is a great game that has all the spices of a fantasy like romance, freedom, travel, etc. so Jiwoo must refrain from destroying it and he must take his time to enjoy it instead. At present, Jiwoo is thinking about his conversation with Choi when the leader of the hunting party spits at Kyantuka, and then he leaves with the rest of his party, leaving poor Kyantuka alone. Soon Kyan receives a message that she has been kicked out of the party. When Jiwoo sees that, he immediately concludes that travel, romance, and freedom are all crap. In the game only one rule prevails, which is survival of the fittest, and this is how Jiwoo wants to enjoy it. As he watches those three adventures trotting away, he decides to put a game over for them by swinging his stick, but then something holds his feet. It's Kyantuka who begins to yell wildly about the crappiness and uselessness of the game. She curses her fellow hunters who insulted her for having a trashy item and thinks that those people have no eyes weapons, and how she spent a fortune on that sword. Meanwhile, Jiwoo is watching her dumbfounded, as the whole scene reminds him of the time when he first entered the game. It seems as if he is in a state of déjà vu. Kayanika declares tearfully that she doesn't need any party hunters and from now onward she will be going solo. With that she begins to storm away. Poor Jiwoo is at a loss for words. Soon Kayanuka has an encounter with a boss monster very much like Horus. In fact, she is surrounded by monsters belonging to Horus's army. The monsters slowly begin to charge towards her with red gleaming laser beam eyes. Kayanuka is petrified on seeing several hideous monsters charging towards her. So she delves her face between her two hands and scrunches her eyes. But before she could be attacked, a gallant Jiwoo comes in the middle, and then his mind suddenly makes a choice. He immediately strikes the stick on the ground near the monsters and soon a raging fire begins to dance in front of those beasts. The flames not only engulf all those hideous beasts but also they fly upward going beyond the boundary of the planet toward outer space. Meanwhile, a frightened Kayanuka is still standing in the same position when she gradually opens her eyes. When the chaos is cleared, Jiwoo glances at Kayanuka, and senses sympathy and pity prevail through him. Still, Jiwoo is defiant that he didn't help Kayanuka for those reasons. There is this weird feeling developing in his heart that he cannot name. Maybe he helped her out of fun. Both Jiwoo and Kayanuka stand facing each other as if posing for some movie stills, but then Jiwoo decides to break the ice and wonders whether there is a chance that both Kayanuka and he form a hunting party. So now the real story of Jiwoo begins, but now he should think of putting on some more clothes rather than a worn-out undergarment along with a barely covering hood. When Kayanuka is offered a hunting party with Jiwoo, she readily insults him by making the most hideous face a lady can form, depicting that she is a one hard-to-get woman. The reason she presents is that she doesn't work with novices. She goes beyond her manners when she spits on the ground to prove her point. But Jiwoo seems to be love-struck as he doesn't mind her trivial insolence at all. He is optimistic that the relationship kick-started smoothly. A matter that drew the world's attention was Doomsday or the End of the World, which is quite popular among people nowadays. There has been an endless debate in the world's gaming community about the mass murder of 800,000 people, the second slaughter of 3 million people, the identity of the notorious killer, psychopath genocide, god of battle, etc. Also, the topic discussion is about the strongest one in Chrono Life. However, many users feel that there is no strongest person but it's either a bug or a hacker, which seems like a very reasonable opinion. According to the gamers, the hacker should be permanently ousted or his IP should be blocked, and his character should be deleted. Thus now everyone's attention has been focused on the Chrono Life's reaction or response. One day the much-awaited response comes in the form of an announcement that the culprit is basically a normal user like others. According to their investigations, the user is neither a hacker nor a bug abuser, and he thoroughly follows the rules and regulations of the game. So the message is seen by all the ardent loyalists of Chrono Life and instantly the controversy hype died down. Meanwhile, the adventurers are still discussing the man in poster, that Chrono's server died because of that person. Many feel that the poster boy looks amazing and must be a lady killer in real life, sure with those undies and black tent definitely. Meanwhile, the flushed lady killer dreamily walks behind his latest crush who trots forward with much aloofness. But then even she becomes agitated and confronts him for following her like a lovesick puppy. Jiwoo stretches himself and coolly mentions that they are supposed to do party hunting. However, Kayanuka cries in disdain that she doesn't want to form a party with someone poor and indecent like him, that's why clothes are important. Even Kayanuka points out his minimal attire, and the latter is humiliated to the core. Not only that, she also points at his wooden stick to be trashier than her own sword, as a stick can only be used at level 1. An irked Kyanuka walks away as she does not have time to play with babies. Now this time even Jiwoo is hurt by being called indecent despite saving her from those horrendous monsters in one hit. The purple pet peeves reasons that her eyes were closed when he warded away those monsters. A perplexed Jiwoo guesses that Kyanuka doesn't know that he is strong. He stares at her back while she stomps off fuming. It is then the genius is struck with one of the brilliant ideas, that is LHS or loser hiding his strength. In a flash of lightning, he dashes after the impertinent lady, calling out to him loudly. The cheeky baby coos to his babysitter to carry him. Now here carry means the act of master party hunting with novice players and catching the monsters instead. When the flustered girl shows confusion, a sly Jiwoo explains that he is new to this game and doesn't know anything about it. When Jiwoo calls out the enchanting word master, immediately Kyanuka's facial expression mellows down, and she recalls the time she had been insulted by her comrades, and now for the very first time someone has called her master. The girl is in tears out of emotions. Now Oris has been watching the whole scene throughout and expresses his displeasure. However, Jiwoo mischievously mentions that he is pretending to be weak by hiding his powers. They are almost blown away by the shrill shriek of Kyanuka, who cannot believe that she has been honored in such a way. She exclaims that she finds the situation quite embarrassing, and since a master is supposed to help newbies, she will be an expert to him for just once. With that, the system notifies them that Kyanuka has invited them to her hunt party. All the time she has been yelling so much that poor Jiwoo had to stuff his fingers into his ears. Soon Kyanuka's stats are revealed, having a level 24 and is an expert fighter and martial artist. Later, near the front village, at the beginning of the dungeon, Kyanuka is gallantly battling huge monster rabbits called bunny bears of level 4. She punches and kicks them using her bare limbs. She uses expert leaping techniques like the fallen dragon stomp to ward off the monsters. She twirls and somersaults like an expert while taking down the humongous bunny bears without getting a single scratch. Meanwhile, Jiwoo and Urus have been watching their master perform expert moves, and Jiwoo admits that the lady has some talent, because no matter how low level a monster is, it is always life-threatening to be surrounded by them. In other words, Kyanuka has been carrying quite well. Even Urus agrees that Jiwoo doesn't have to worry, as the lady is quite well equipped. The metal fists that she has adorned cost roughly 10 million gold. Now Jiwoo is taken aback because 10 million gold means the same amount in cash. The girl is pretty much loaded. The Peeves guesses that her total worth is around 100 million won. Jiwoo wonders, how come the girl has all that equipment despite being a newbie? Urus explains the reason, which is P2W, or pay to win. A distraught Jiwoo ponders that Kyanuka really has paid a lot for this game. Out of a sudden, he jumps out of his skin when Kyanuka yells at him, calling him panty, and reprimands him for being lazy and good for nothing. She orders him to hit those bunny bears with his wooden stick. Now Jiwoo pretends to be bewildered about hitting those monsters with a mere level wooden stick. Kyanuka urges him to fight so that he can get stronger at a rapid rate, or else he will continue being a douchebag. The lady boss keeps on lecturing him about his nonchalant behavior without realizing that a huge bunny bear is about to pounce on her from behind. Jiwoo frantically touches the monster with his stick, and in no time it explodes away in fire. Kyanuka is too busy being a master to notice that, though. Still, she wonders with fury about this sudden wind inside a dungeon. The poor lad is totally busted as he goes through the crisis of the collapse of the hiding power concept. Suddenly the system displays a notification that is for Kyanuka, that something important will start in 10 minutes and she must get out of the game. Kyanuka frowns in agitation and is literally fuming. She resolves to log out from the game for 30 minutes and return. She instructs him to practice hunting mobs during her absence, and with that, she vanishes. Now Kyanuka's behavior baffles Jiwoo as she disappears as she pleases. He wonders about her real-life profession as she has the financial strength to spend 100 million only on the game. Boris guesses that maybe she was born rich. Meanwhile, in a music center, Kyanuka is lying on a mattress with a headgear placed on her eyes. As she is off the game, she adorns her specs and recalls the moments spent with that lunatic person Jiwoo. A faint smile appears on her lips. Suddenly a woman enters her room rashly and curses her for still idling around and playing games. She wonders whether Kyanuka has decided to abandon her work.
If you like this video, please subscribe, leave a like and comment.